1970s was not just an interesting time, it was rather a challenging time when mechanical watchmaking was at the verge of a collapse due to quartz crisis. The concept that triggered some of the oldest watch manufacturers to think out of the box and provide the watch world with a concept where watches were not just merely an instrument for time telling, rather a piece of wearable that offers the pleasure and experience to the wearer. This was the time when some of the top-tier brands started making watches with integrated bracelet designs, with AP to introduce the concept in the form of Royal Oak, and then Patek Philippe, Vacheron Constantin, GP and IWC followed the trend later. Tissot, although were not a part of haute horology, yet desperate times during the quartz crisis called for desperate measures, and Tissot had their own answer not long after the first integrated watch by Audemars Piguet, the Royal Oak, was introduced. And in 1978, we saw the Tissot C-Star with an integrated bracelet design and a cushion-like watch case profile. As the C-Star was not meant to be a luxury steel watch, rather it was an alternative from the brand to offer another integrated bracelet watch design. It was aligned with the changing times, and it came with a quartz movement. So while what we see today as the PRX line and may assume that it is an homage to Royal Oak, it is actually a revival of Tissot C-Star, although the original C-Star model from the 70s indeed did take the inspiration originally from the Royal Oak back in the time. This time, while Tissot have maintained the case shape, dial layout and the design for the bracelet, the dial texture or pattern here again takes a further inspiration from the Royal Oak, where we get tapestry pattern and a similar scale and three-dimensional texture is offered in the PRX reference this time. If you are wondering what does the PRX stand for, it is actually an acronym for precise, robust, and X being the Roman numeral for 10, representing 10 bars or 100 meters of water resistance. So while from the flash and the looks, you may consider this as a dressier watch, the attributes of ruggedness and water resistance are there to make it a sports watch, which also is well complemented by the all-steel bracelet, which further comes all brushed, and then there are chamfered and polished edges between the links to add that touch of blink to the overall experience on the wrist. This particular model in the video is a blue dial model that comes with a similar tapestry pattern as you see in the Royal Oak, and in return you have a dial with a three-dimensional texture and then a shade of blue that plays with the light where you see the hues and reflections playing on the dial under specific lighting. The shade of the blue here is relatively darker, so it can look to be a black dial, which is more like the beauty of this dial, where it can look black in one instance and then shows all the hues of blue when the light hits it right. The hour markers had chamfered edges, and then the dial hands come with multiple facets to allow them to reflect the light and not just look elegant but help with the legibility for time reading. Speaking about the dimensions on the watch measured on my caliber, the size of the case measured at the outer extremity of the bezel is 37 mm, but if you measure the size of the case externally from 2 to 8 o'clock position, the dimension returns the reading of 40.5 mm. So while the watch case is technically 40.5 mm in size, the face of the watch is smaller and it does not look as big as typical 40 mm watches. To measure the size of the dial, I measured the size of the crystal on top, which is 32.4 mm. So again, while the bezel is small on it, the overall face of the watch is adequately sized and it does not look big or out of proportions. How the watch looks on the wrist is one thing and how it wears on the wrist is another, and the minimum span of the watch here is 51.4 mm. This is because the first link of the bracelet on both sides of the case does not taper straight down, rather it flares out further outwards, and I will discuss this further in my wrist shot shortly. The watch case is relatively thin and it measures at only 11.3mm, and I don't consider this as a thick watch by any means. The watch case comes with fully brushed treatment and it adds to the overall sporty looks of the watch. There's a very elegant chamfered lip at the top surface of the case, and then there's a further polished bevel at each link on the horizontal side. Aside from the polished edge, the bracelet is fully brushed. There's a crown with T for Tissot embossed on it, and while the water resistance here is 100 meters, the crown is push-in only, so I would personally be reluctant in taking this watch to underwater or for swimming. The bracelet also comes fully brushed, and a simple one-link system adds to the simplicity and elegance of the watch. And you can also notice how clearly you can even see the brushed lines. That, put simply, is an amazing attribute for the price of this watch. Putting the watch in the dark, you can see how the blue dial gives out those amazing reflections that really change the experience completely, from outdoors to indoors. And then turning the lights off, we have a fully lumed dial with all the hour markers and the hour and minute hand fully lumed. The lume here is not the brightest I have ever seen for this price. Rather, it is actually very weak, leaving the watch in the dark for another 5 minutes almost had the lume fully dead. So the lume here is indeed not the strongest point for this watch. Turning the watch upside down, we have an exhibition case back to show the mechanical movement. Considering the price of the watch, the movement looks fine. It is basic in its looks and aesthetics, but you really can't have everything in the price that this watch carries. And I personally have no complaints from the looks or finish of the movement. It is ETA 2824 movement, and as the watch name is Powermatic 80, it offers a massive 80 hours of power reserve. I checked the accuracy of the movement and timed it with a digital watch. After 24 hours of observation time, this particular piece in the video lost only 1 second, which is an incredible accuracy for basically any mechanical watch at any price point. On the wrist, the Tissot PRX Powermatic 80 wears absolutely beautifully. My wrist size is 6.5 inches and wristband is 55mm, and as I quoted earlier that the minimum span of the watch is 51.5mm, so it's not really a small watch in terms of its wearability by any means. But since my wristband is wider than the minimum span of the watch, I can pull it off, and it rather works very well for my wrist. The face of the watch is not that large, so while it wears tall, it does not look that large. Due to a larger minimum span, I think you should not consider this watch if you have a wrist size less than 6 inches or a wristband lesser than 52mm, because it will otherwise not contour to your wrist. The bracelet with the flat links play with the light and offers a little more premium looks than the price of the watch would suggest, and I personally don't recall a single watch where I enjoyed the bracelet this much, at even over 10 times higher price point than this watch. The watch with integrated bracelet hugs my wrist and is not just thin, rather sits flat on the wrist and can easily work for both formal and casual occasions. The bracelet comes with quick release spring bars for the links, which look sturdy and durable. The clasp is double button release and holds firmly, yet there is no extension link system or any micro adjustments on the go. Tissot PRX Powermatic 80 is a watch from a Swiss watch manufacturer to answer the question of integrated watch design at a more affordable price point. While originally released earlier this year in quartz configuration, this time Tissot have added a mechanical movement, which is basically a core attribute for any luxury steel watch, especially in an integrated watch design. And this time, there's a dial pattern that offers somewhat similar looks as you see in very high-end watches. The blue dials are generally sought after in horology, and the Tissot blue here does not disappoint. It is beautiful and it is elegant, and the best part is that despite having the classy looks and dressier vibe, It is at heart a sports watch and comes with durability and water resistance. But when you consider all that it offers and the price tag it carries, you'd be hard pushed to find a better alternative in this price. After wearing this watch for a while and analyzing, observing and experiencing it on the wrist, if you ask me whether there's an affordable integrated bracelet watch in the market that offers better value proposition, I tell you already, I have no other watch that rings the bell.